You are here for the Forum on Active Transportation. My name is Danielle Kroll. I am a Senior Transportation Planner here at the SMTC. Also here with our office, with our SMTC office today, are Megan Vitale. She's our Principal Planner. Andrew Frazier is on helping out with a call too. He's our Senior Transportation Analyst. We've got Tom Bardenett either with us or joining soon. He is a transportation planner with us, and I think that's everyone from SMTC. Hope I didn't miss anybody. We also are, we've also got this live on YouTube, if I am correct. So we've got that going on too. And so for those of you that are new to this forum, what we do is we hold questions until the end. We've got about, well, we had about 45-ish, 46 people register for the meeting today. So that just helps us kind of keep tabs and make sure we're not all interrupting each other. So if you could hold questions till the end, or go ahead and while people are speaking, you can just put them right in the chat. And after our speakers have all spoken and shared the information they're going to share, then we'll start going through those questions and the questions that people submitted prior to the meeting today. So let's see. So this is the agenda for today on our screen. We'll skip introducing all the meeting attendees. We've got a lot of folks. You can kind of scroll through and see who's here. I do want to take a quick second just to let you know, I think at this point, a lot of people have, for the most part, are familiar with the meeting controls for Zoom, but I've got them here on the screen. And again, as people were joining, I mentioned we have this information also on our website, smtcmpo.org, under the public participation tab. If you go to meetings and then scroll to the bottom, you can reach that. Again, if you are calling in, there's some information about that on our website as well. And just a reminder just a friendly reminder to be respectful of one another while we're on our meeting today. That's appreciated. And I'm going to get right into the SMTC staff updates. So again, for those of you that are new, we kind of follow the same agenda. This is our fourth meeting of this kind. And what we like to do is go through and share our agency's updates. We're the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the Syracuse Onondaga County area. And so one of the, I'll let you know what's going on with our agency now. And again, if you could just hold your questions till the end, that's appreciated. Or put them into the chat pod. So we are currently finishing up our 2021-2022 program year. It's our Unified Planning Work Program year, we call it. And those are the planning projects that we work on as staff throughout the year. And so the couple of projects that are bike ped related that are in the process of being completed, they have gone through our planning committee last week. And what we have to do is at the end of these projects, our planning committee has to approve, will basically recommend that our policy committee, we have got a few layers here, that our policy committee approve the study as being complete. So the two that are going to be going forward to our policy committee next week are the Tuscarora Road Corridor study that we completed for the Village of Chittenango. And again, this is still in draft form until, looking at my calendar, until next week, until February 10th. I'm sorry, in a couple of weeks, February 10th, when our policy committee determines if we've completed this as we were supposed to. Usually that's not an issue. So another one of those projects that is going to be presented to them is the Safe Routes to School white paper that we had completed for the city of Syracuse. And if you're interested in hearing more about those two projects, we had recorded our planning committee meeting last week, and that is on our website. And Megan is going to share the link to that if you want to take a look at that sometime following today's meeting. We've got a couple of studies that we are continuing work on, and sometimes what happens is we'll start a project halfway through a work program year, and we'll need to continue that through the beginning of the next program year. So that's what's happening with these studies that have the asterisk shown on the screen there. The Village of Skaneateles Pedestrian Safety and Access Study, the Manlius Village Center Pedestrian Safety and Mobility Study, the Empire State Trail Local Economic Opportunities Plan. And these are just the studies that are focused primarily on bicycle and pedestrian activity. We've got a lot of other studies on our work program in addition to these here. We're also continuing to work with the city on sidewalk condition ratings. And I can't remember the exact number of how many miles we looked at this past year, but it's excessive, and it's pretty awesome. We're able to get some data for the city on that. So upcoming projects, our unified work program year runs from April to April. So also up for a vote at the upcoming policy committee meeting are these projects listed on your screen. These will be part of our next year's program. And these are the projects listed are the ones that primarily that have a bicycle / pedestrian / active transportation component to them. There are several. The Downtown Intersection Safety Study, Westvale Plaza Revitalization, Coldbrook Creek Trail, West Side Trail in the city. There's a Community Streets program, phase 2 of our Safe Routes to School program. Got a Nedrow Route 11 corridor study, Martisco Rail to Trail evaluation, and then kind of a block of money set aside to work with the Onondaga County, Syracuse Onondaga County Planning Agency. There's a couple of bike ped related projects with that. Now, these projects have not been scoped yet, so we don't have a ton of detail on them yet. We'll work all of that out once this program is approved, hopefully on February 10th. And again, if you have any interest in seeing the presentation that we shared on the UPWP and the other studies I mentioned, they were recorded as part of the planning committee meeting that we held on the 20th. And then at the same information is going to be shared at the policy committee meeting coming up in February. And you can watch that live on our YouTube channel. So let's see if I forget what else. Did I forget anything else here? All right.
Danielle.
Yes.
I just wanted to add, just so everyone knows, so our UPWP, our Unified Planning Work Program for our upcoming program year is for 2022 to 2023. So that always starts on April 1st. So yep. These are the new projects we will start working on as of April 1st, assuming that UPWP is adopted by our policy committee. The UPWP is one of the documents that has to go out for public comment. So it is out for public comment right now. And we are taking public comments on that through February 9th. So I'm going to put into the chat the link to the news page of our website. So from there, you should be able to get to the draft UPWP, and there will be up an agenda for the upcoming policy committee meeting that is on February 10th that will also be live streamed on Zoom. And if you go to our YouTube channel, you can see a recording of the previous planning committee meeting. So it will be the same presentation pretty much of the new planning studies. So if you're interested in that, I put into the chat, again, the link to the news page on our website, and you should be able to find the draft UPWP from there. And links to watch those presentations or to watch the policy committee live stream.
Great, thanks, Megan. Okay, so let's see here. Next on the agenda, I gotta get my screen working. There we go. So the next item on the agenda, what we do is we ask our main member agencies to share updates on bicycle pedestrian related projects that that they have going on, or they want to update us on. And so usually we ask New York State Department of Transportation, and we ask Onondaga County Department of Transportation and the city of Syracuse to share any updates they might have. So if we want to, let's unmute Julie Bednar. She is a senior transportation analyst with the New York State Department of Transportation, and she's going to share any updates that New York State DOT has.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I don't have too much today because we're kind of in the winter time where there's not a lot of construction happening. So a lot of the stuff that we're doing is behind the scenes. But the two main things that I was going to bring up today, one is the Cicero Route 11 sidewalk project that we're doing. Over the winter here, we're finishing up our right-of-way acquisition, and it should be in construction this upcoming year. That'll fill in the gaps on Route 11 north of Bear Road, up to 31. I think it was, I'd have to look at the limits exactly on it, and I forgot. I think it was Factory Ave and Stevens Drive area. So that'll be next year. And then the other thing going on is we were doing a bunch of pedestrian infrastructure updates along the Erie Boulevard in places where we hadn't done the Empire State Trail, mostly sidewalk and pedestrian signals, crosswalks, things like that. And we're between Bridge Street and East Genesee Street. That was supposed to be in construction this past year, but due to delays with the contractor, that's going to be coming up in this upcoming year. So that's what I have to report on today.
All right, thanks, Julie. Appreciate that. And I was going to have, I don't see Chris Rover here. Do you see him from Onondaga County DOT? He did register. If he hops in later, we'll put him on the spot then. So our next member agency that we asked for updates is Neil Burke. He is the City of Syracuse DPWP. I'm sorry, getting all of my acronyms mixed up here with DPW and UPWP. So Neil is our the City of Syracuse DPW Director of Special Projects. And he's also going to be one of our speakers. So to talk about sidewalk snow removal. So Neil, if you want to go ahead, I don't know if you have any updates other than talking about sidewalk snow removal, but if you do and you want to roll those into that discussion, feel free.
Sounds good.
All right.
Neil, do you need to screen share? Oh, you muted yourself again.
Yeah, if you can,
Yep.
sorry, if you can allow me to screen share, that'd be great.
Will do. Hold on 1 second. Where'd you go?
All right, so it sounds like you'll be hearing from myself as well as Town of Camillus. So to set the stage here, the city of Syracuse has had one form of sidewalk snow clearing now for 3 out of the last 4 years. Unfortunately, the budget was unceremoniously cut last year at the last minute due to COVID-related shortfalls and decisions that came down from above. So that was a pretty big letdown last year, and we planned to expand the network last year. We were adding a couple of streets, so we rolled that over into this season, and we continued to expand our network. We're now at just over 100 miles of sidewalks that we clear. And if you wait a little while, you'll see the sidewalk crews going out either later tonight or possibly tomorrow once the final snow drifts in before our potential weekend extravaganza. So our program was funded through just operational dollars. We were turning over couch cushions and looking at old projects and really squeezing dollars anywhere we could find them, out of anywhere we could find. This past summer, the city moved forward with a municipal sidewalk program, which allows for a dedicated funding stream for sidewalk repairs, sidewalk construction, as well as sidewalk snow removal. And we're funding that using Recovery Act money. So we're funding that with ARPA dollars this year. So there's no fee to residents. And we're just starting this year. So there's a lot of learning curves for us. We've done things a very specific way for as long as the city's been incorporated, 100+ years. And we heard that it wasn't working for residents, and the Walsh administration took it upon themselves to move the needle. So we're still learning, we're still growing, we're still trying to get better. It's definitely not a exact science at the moment, and we intend to keep iterating and improving. But as it relates to sidewalk snow removal, like I mentioned, we're doing about just over 100 miles of sidewalks, and we clear those sidewalks. Hopefully you can see my screen here. We clear those sidewalks with a 3-inch accumulation trigger. And what that means is that we will allow 3 inches of snow to fall before we send the contractor out. We're usually in close contact with our contractor well in advance. If we know snow's coming, we're discussing the best times to go out. We typically send out the contractors overnight because that's the times we see lowest ped volumes, which is very helpful for us. That's the times we see the fewest amount of blocked driveways, especially around commercial areas. So again, that's helpful to us. And that also allows the operator to get out ahead of when students may be heading to school or businesses, centers, other places are opening. Like I said, it's not an exact science. Our contractors learning the ropes with us since we added a lot of new routes, and it takes time to be familiarized with those routes. And every winter event is different, as they keep telling us. So hopefully this map isn't too small. There is a version of this on the city's website if you look for it under snow safety. But we have highlighted here pink, which are the routes that existed previous to this year, and then blue for new. These are the routes that were added this year, as well as our trail system of the Creek Walk and the Empire State Trail. And so that's a whole different aspect of snow clearing for us. And it's one that we're having a significant learning curve with. We actually have significant issues with the equipment that we use right now and its reliability. So you may notice that the Empire State Trail has some snow on it right now, and that's due to the fact that our equipment is being worked on as we speak. So what isn't shown in this map is that we do have some collaborations with community partners. Those aren't highlighted here, but our agreement with Syracuse University covers a good portion of Comstock and Colvin, as well as portions of Euclid Ave. So our clearings, we monitor those by spot checking. We'll go out in the field, we'll drive around, we'll take measurements, we'll take pictures, we'll make sure the contractors are doing what they're doing. But we also have their fleet monitored using GPS. So we can see in real time where the sidewalk plowing fleet is, where they've been, how long they've been out, and a number of other details. That's new again this year. That's very, very helpful for us for our record keeping and again, our spot checking. The way in which we determine these routes, it was all done by SMTC. I'm kidding mostly, but they did help with an enormous amount of research and data collection and data crunching and analysis and synthesis and everything else under the sun. So we focused on high volume roadways where we really, if we had the choice between two roads, and we didn't want someone walking in the road, we're going to pick the road with the highest amount of vehicle traffic. And again, we're looking at this as an opportunity to keep iterating and keep building, but we have to draw the line somewhere, and we can't clear every street. So we want to clear the ones that will have the biggest impact. So we looked at volumes. We also looked at known pedestrian generators. Those are schools, those are parks, those are corner stores, those are pharmacies, senior centers, churches, you name it. We had SMTC crunch all of this data for us and help us determine a lot of these routes. And so a lot of this isn't much surprise. Most everyone on this call is probably very familiar with the city of Syracuse. The higher volume, the busier roads are the ones that you see on here. And those take precedent over a lot of the local roads. Again, we want to keep adding in the years to come, but this is our current network, and it has worked fairly well for us in creating a usable pedestrian network that's available winter long. So again, we're not clearing every single street, and I don't know if we'll get to that point, but we're going to keep adding and building using this framework. And so I think that was at least 10 minutes straight. So with that, I don't know if we're going to jump right over to Camillus or how you guys want to handle that.
Yep, we are going to jump right over to Camillus. Okay, just make sure you guys can all hear me, right? Okay, we're going to jump over to Camillus, and we've got from Camillus, from the town of Camillus, we have Paul Lagnetto, who is the highway superintendent for the town of Camillus, and he's going to basically share their sidewalk snow removal program. And we'll take, Megan had put in the chat here, just a reminder, we'll take all the questions after the presentation. And if something pops into your head and you don't want to forget, go ahead and put that right in the chat if you want. And with that, Paul, I'm going to pass it over to you to talk about Camillus's snow removal program.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Just an overview, quick overview of Camillus. Obviously, we're much smaller than the city of Syracuse. We're there having to do 100 miles of sidewalk. We only have about 5.7 miles of sidewalk to clear. Our main sidewalks are along the business district along West Genesee Street and some routes to the elementary school over on Onondaga Road. In general, we plow, snow blow, and salt all the walks and ramps here in the town of Camillus. We use a few different pieces of machinery to get that done. We've chosen the machinery based on cost and also usability. We use 2 Kubota type snow plows that are lighter duty. They're 4-wheel drive machines. They're 1100 Cs if anybody wants the exact size. And we chose those because they can handle the many trips from the shop, because we obviously run salt on all the sidewalks. It's about 1.9 miles from our shop to the beginning of the sidewalks, and then another 4.7 miles to the furthest point on our sidewalks. During that time, we usually take about 1 to 2 trips for salting and sanding of the sidewalks. We don't usually use sand, we use salt. But on those runs, we usually will take 1 or 2 trips to complete the entire sidewalk network with 2 different Kubotas. And if we have to plow with a lighter snow, that usually takes 2 or 3 runs, because they have to use a little bit more salt to take care of that. During a heavy snow, we have 2 tool cats. They're made by Bobcat. They have a snow blower attachment. And obviously that takes a little more time, a little more tedious when the snow becomes like 6 inches or more deep. It has to be done with a snow blower. And then when the snow in the business district, because the business district has 5 lanes of traffic, and all that snow goes out to the side and buries the sidewalks, we have a larger machine. We run a larger skid steer with a truck loading chute, and we actually load the snow out a couple times a year. But again, we'll use the toolcats and the bobcats to do the general clearing. Now, some of the things that happens during that, obviously, we're right adjacent to the county highway, being West Genesee Street. There's not much of a snow shelf. So every time the county snowplow goes by, it buries the sidewalk. So we play a little bit of battle of clear the sidewalk after every time the plow truck goes by. So that can take up some time. Our Kubotas will carry about 3/4 of a yard or 1,500 pounds of salt. And we do on an average of about 70 runs a year, which equates to about 210 tons of salt on the sidewalks every year. That's with the 70 runs. At this year, we're only in the 20 some odd run, almost 30 runs for the year, which is pretty low for this time of year. Dollar wise, it's about $40 a ton for us for salt. So with the 210 tons, it's about $8,400 a year in salt. Obviously, for us, the keeping the sidewalks clear right down to the sidewalk surface is a little higher quality of user than the cities. Obviously, they're just plowing and not salting. So, and I couldn't imagine the cost of 100 miles of sidewalk being salted. But it does help us from storm to storm to bring that back down to the surface. So that way the school kids, we obviously have a lot of pedestrians that use the sidewalks in the business district, but the school kids use that to get to the high school on West Genesee Street and to the elementary school. We got a lot of walkers. Some of the difficulties that we run into, obviously, again, the large snow events, they can slow things down. The roads push all their snow to the side and bury the sidewalk, so it gets rather heavy, too much for the Kubotas to push. So we have to blow that snow with the snow blowers, and that goes a little bit slower. One of the things that helps is if the distance from the sidewalk was a little bit more, like on Onondaga Road, there's a little bit more of a clearance, maybe 5 feet of snow shelf area. That really helps because then the sidewalks don't get buried so quickly. Again, like the city, crossing driveways becomes an issue. We have a lot of residential driveways, and then we have commercial driveways alike. And crossing those driveways with your private plow companies, they tend to bury the ends of the sidewalks, and that makes it difficult. So that's another challenge, to coordinate with them to make sure that they don't bury the sidewalk and you can continue to clear the sidewalks. Another thing is through our business district, our sidewalks tend to get narrow in some areas, and it's hard to get the sidewalk equipment through those narrow areas with the street signs and street lamp posts and all that kind of thing. So again, we haul the snow out of the business district a couple times a year because that gets really deep. But in general, we can push everything to the two sides. I guess that's pretty much it. Much simpler than the city. But again, we use our own forces for that. And we have our own equipment. So we do not send that out to private. I think it's a lot more economical for us because everything's done with state and county bids as far as equipment, and we have to have the manpower here anyway during the summer months. So this keeps them very busy in the winter clearing the sidewalks. So we make good utilization. The other thing is much of this equipment is used not just for clearing the sidewalks in the winter. We can switch it, and we use the same piece of equipment during the summer months for other pieces. So it serves a dual purpose. So I guess I'll take any questions at the end.
Did you want to, I don't know if you can see it, Paul, but I think Andrew was able to share the Google Earth map. I didn't know if you wanted to
Yep.
say anything about that.
Yep, I see, put that up. The green line represents the travel path from the shop to the beginning of the sidewalk. We travel along Milton Ave and up Knoll Road to the beginning of the sidewalks at West Genesee Street and Knoll. There's a portion that goes up Cassim Road. And then obviously all up and down West Genesee Street. The first portion of West Genesee is the business district. Then there's a pretty good stretch that goes through kind of a mixed commercial residential area. Then it gets back into heavy urban area again down in the Fairmount area where the county had just recently installed new sidewalks along West Genesee Street and along Warner's Road. So those both have been included in this year's operation. And then you can see the pathway to the south that's on Onondaga Road. Generally, a lot of pedestrians use that to get to the school. The high school is kind of in the middle of the West Genesee corridor. Again, so the green line's 1.9 miles. And then to the furthest distance on the red line from the shop is 4.7 miles. So that's pretty much it.
All right, let's see. I am going to thank you very much, both
You're welcome.
Neil and Paul, for sharing how your municipal sidewalk programs work. I'm going to just share my screen again here real quick. Let's see. Get through to the right spot. Okay, so we are up to the question and answer and discussion period. So if we have specific questions for Paul or for Neil about the sidewalk snow clearance, it'd be great if we could hear those first, and then we'll get into the questions that were sent to us ahead of today's meeting. Okay, I'm gonna stop. Let's see. Stop sharing so I can see what's going on here. Okay. What do we got first?
Okay, so Anika, you should be able to unmute.
Oh, there we go. Okay, good.
Well, as far as for this, I'll have other questions for later, but as far as for Neil, has there been a focus as far as with the new bike share? I know the bikes are not out yet, but right now, but for the scooters, is there a focus on making sure that you can get to the hubs, that they can pull the scooters out, or how is that clearing going? Because I know it has to do with pedestrians, but also to utilize that because they are out for the winter. So I just want to question that.
It's a good question. So for those who may not know, the city's bike and scooter share does operate year round. So if you're feeling like you need to get out and spend some time outside, bikes and scooters are still available. But the point about, are we prioritizing certain areas? We're prioritizing the main roads, and it just so happens to be that we've located a good number of the hubs and the racks on those main roads. So our snow clearing gets us a 48-inch wide clear path, and they go straight down the street. They go straight down the sidewalk until they get to the curb ramp at the corner. So they won't go into, say, bus stops. They're not focused on the bike share areas or normal bike racks or any of that stuff, which, again, we want to iterate, and maybe that's something we can include. But right now, they're not targeting those areas. But again, the best news we have here is that we've located a lot of these things on the same roads.
Okay, and I know, Anika, you said you have a follow-up on that.
Yeah, I have, yes.
Because she had her hand up as well.
So that was A. Now B for that is, what about the trails? Because I know part of, oh goodness, the trails have, not all the trails are clear either. And that has to do not just with the bike share, but as far as pedestrians being able to get from A to B as well. I mean, they are taxpayers, should be able to use some of all the trails too, like the canal and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, another good question. Like I was mentioning, we're still learning, we're including the trails in our total clearing map that I had up earlier. And so those are done in-house. Those are done by Public Works. And literally our equipment keeps breaking. So they're getting to it when they can, when the equipment's operational. But it's a struggle and it's a real learning curve. So we, in addition to the trails, our crews also maintain a number of sidewalks around things like underpasses and other areas where we're obligated through a service agreement to clear. And so when our equipment's down, we feel it, and we're feeling it right now. But again, we want to get better. We're bringing on a new trails specific position. If they haven't hired for it, I believe they're in the process for it. And that person's job will be year round, focusing on trails, which winter maintenance, but also fall, summer, and spring maintenance. Because I know I can see some friendly faces on here who definitely report the glass in the bike lanes, the trash on the trails. And honestly, we've probably needed someone on staff to take care of that specifically, because we task our environmental crews with doing a lot. So the good news is we seem to be hiring someone specifically for this. And then next year you can pester them with the good questions.
Okay, we're gonna go to Mary. You should be able to unmute. Yep.
I have, thank you. I just have a question about bus stops. I just heard you say that you don't go off there. Who is responsible for that? Just driving down East Genesee Street today, watching people stand in the street because they cannot access anything off the road. Seems super dangerous, and I know downtown is an issue. Who is responsible for that?
That's a great question, and the answer is Centro.
So Centro should be out clearing that because they're not doing it. Okay, so that's where the questions should go. All right. And the other one, you mentioned Euclid and Comstock. Is that just normal things, or do you have a particular relationship or service contract with Syracuse University?
Yeah, there's been a service contract for a number of years. I don't know the specifics on it, so I can't pretend to be an expert. But you may have seen in the news in some recent happenings that an updated version of the services contract was just passed. And again, I'm not important enough to, I think, make it in those meetings, but I do know that there is increased emphasis on SU's relationship to the streets, specifically sidewalks and the public areas that they either front or their students interact with on a regular basis. So
okay, so they do pay for that then.
I don't know how it specifically breaks down, but there is a transfer of funds, yes.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, Paul should be able to unmute.
Yeah, thanks. I don't actually have a question. Just wanted to make a comment about the shoveling out of the bike share hubs. And I just want to mention, even though the city doesn't do it themselves, they have a wonderful free service to do that. And that is me out with a shovel as soon as this meeting ends. So they should all be shoveled out at least relatively closely after it finishes snowing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Bob.
Yeah, hi. I'm babysitting here. People may have noticed or watching my grandson make a mess. But for Neil, I just had a question. We have talked a while back about trying to connect the sidewalks that are being cleared by the city with the city school district school buildings that all have their own snow blower and snow blow around the building, but to connect those side streets possibly with the main streets that are being cleared by the city. I didn't know if there's been any progress on that.
No progress, but we are going to still try. We've done a lot of work, again, with SMTC, highlighting that if hey, SCSD, if you could just clear another half a block, we would connect all the students, with these other streets. So we're going to keep pushing, but they're in a bit of a bind right now. So we've had to pause some of our other discussions with them, just simply because it's a struggle getting them to a meeting or on the phone, because they're dealing with their own set of nightmares on a day-to-day. But
Yeah,
we're not giving up yet.
I was just going to note, we have 2 current studies on the work program that should directly involve Syracuse City School District. One of them is a loading zones study, and the other one is a safe routes to school study. So, as Neil mentioned, it's been hard to engage with them. They have a lot of other stuff going on. I'm a parent in the district. I get it. They have their hands full with their family engagement staff right now, and a lot of transportation issues as well at the district. So those studies will stay on our work program because we think, as the city does, those are really important issues to address. But we need to be able to do those studies when we can really engage with the district. We can't do those studies without the district at the table.
If I could follow up on that, Megan?
Yeah.
So, about 10 years ago, there was a Safe Routes to School project in Strathmore that was funded and RFP'd and everything, and then dropped by the...
Okay, you just dropped out. You said dropped by the something.
City. I don't know that if you guys are including that. By the city, they didn't even do it any longer. And the money went away and everything. And it's been something that, I've been bringing up over and over again. I didn't know if that would be something, if that would be included in what you're doing in your study.
No. So actually what our study, the current study is a Safe Routes to School manual. And the purpose of it was to create a public facing guidebook so that community or school groups could implement a Safe Routes to School project at their particular school building. So there were some, and I'm actually not aware of the Strathmore one, but we are aware of some others that were done in the city with Trinity Health and Healthy Connections a few years back.
Sorry.
I was going to say at Franklin and Weeks, right?
Yeah.
And go ahead, Danielle.
Yeah. Bob is referring to an actual, I think it was a TAP application back from several years ago that the city had won. And I don't honestly know the particulars of that. I just know obviously that it wasn't completed. And I believe that was just before Neil, that was before Neil's time here as well with the city. I don't know that I've ever had a complete answer for that, Bob. But the project that Megan was just speaking to is separate and different than the one that you're referring to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's fine. I'll keep kicking that dead horse.
Okay.
Keep doing that. Looks like we've got Peter has a question.
Yeah.
Peter King.
Yeah. Okay, you should be able to unmute.
Oh, no, just a comment, not a question on, I think it was near the Latin School, the outer Comstock neighborhood, also had some interest in Safe Routes to School. I don't think it was formalized in funding or anything. Maybe it made the paper or something.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's something that's of interest at many school buildings, and that was kind of the reasoning behind this project, was to create a process and a manual so that at individual buildings, if there's staff or a parent group that want to pursue that Safe Routes to School project, that they have a uniform procedure for doing that, so that those projects look similar across the city. We intended to work with one building in the district in putting together kind of this manual and do a kind of a test case through that process, kind of to make sure that the process that we're laying down in this guidebook is actually practical, it works, that we make the data available to the school that they need, that there's public involvement appropriately throughout that process, and then make that something that could be replicated by, again, community groups, parent groups, the school staff at other buildings throughout the city. Any other questions specifically on the speakers' presentations? I know we have a few, there were some questions that came in, just general questions that came in via email or on the registration form. And we were going to try to address a few of those and then just open it up more generally. So maybe Danielle, if you want to start on some of those questions that came in.
Yes, I will. There were a couple, and actually I think some of them
I think we addressed a couple of them.
Have been addressed already by Neil. We did have a few of those questions about what kind of efforts are being made to clear snow and ice off of bike paths in Syracuse, and if existing bike lanes are included in a plan to plow sidewalks, bike lane maintenance, that sort of thing, especially through the winter. And I think Neil answered those. So we've got, let's see what else am I missing here. Okay. Just 1 second here. I'm looking at the questions that came in so I could make sure we address those. Oh, we did have, if I can find it. We did have a question, an interesting question come in about the Empire State Trail along Erie Boulevard, and how I'm going to actually read this question as it was written and sent to us. So how do we determine if a project is completed and if it was deemed successful? Does its success or not determine if a project will continue to be funded? Tangibly, was the protected Erie Boulevard bike lane considered a success, and how do we determine that success? If that was successful, does that mean we will continue to build more protected bike lanes on major streets? If it was not successful, does that mean we will no longer do projects like this? On the other hand, do low ridership numbers warrant expansion? For example, if we did not meet expected ridership, maybe we need to expand the accessibility to Erie Boulevard. At the moment, there are no bike lanes coming from the north or south that reach Erie. The only safe connections are from east or west. Generally, I'm wondering what happens after a big project like this. Did it check off the bike box for a few years, or does it inspire more similar projects? So just a couple of things that I wanted to make sure we address. I think that's a great question. And I think that's a question we have about a lot of the projects that are built in general. But we have heard similar questions from other people about trail usage and trail usage data and counts, and we are looking into this, and we are aware, we know of a project of counts that Parks and Trails New York conducts along the Empire State Trail throughout the state. Coverage in Central New York is limited, as they've kind of got they do a couple of counts throughout each major region. So these counts would likely need to be completed with some automated counters, which we do not currently own or have access to, but this is definitely something that we can start talking about, and maybe there's a way to take a look at usage. I don't honestly know if New York State had done any pedestrian or bicycle counts prior to construction of the Empire State Trail, but we do have some of that information from when SMTC gathered pedestrian bike counts. It was a few years ago prior to construction, but we might, if there are counts conducted at some point, we'd then be able to compare. I don't know if the state or if Julie or if Neil want to comment on any of that. Julie, let's see, or is that accurate?
Should be able to unmute. Yep. Oh,
okay.
Okay, sorry. I think
Oh,
maybe
that's
both
okay.
of you tried at the same time or something.
I think so. Sorry.
This was a complicated question, and I'm really glad you sent it to me around lunchtime so I could make an attempt at it going forward. So I guess a couple things. so the Erie Boulevard improvements were part of the Empire State Trail system. You mentioned that, but I want to make it clear that this wasn't just done in a vacuum and the money didn't materialize from our local sources. This was a statewide initiative. It was a governor announcement in the state, maybe in 2019 or 18. I'm losing track now.
Yeah,
But
one
it's
of
a
those
couple
years.
And the governor at the time found, I think, 200 million statewide to build this trail network connecting between Albany and Buffalo, and then also I'm less familiar with what it does over in the Capital District area from downstate to upstate, but in north-south through there. Let's see. The route that we took for the Empire State Trail on Erie was based on lots of studies and work that SMTC helped with. I think you've been studying it for at least 2 decades now.
Probably longer.
Yeah. So
Something like that.
a lot of the groundwork was laid ahead of time for what that route would be. We also had from NYSA's perspective, we had wanted to do a big set of improvements on Erie Boulevard going back 15 or 20 years now. Because we had identified crash patterns, and we had a lot of, like, you could see the desire lines where there was missing sidewalks, you could see worn footpaths and things like that. So although it materialized in the exact format it is now out of the Empire State Trail and the bike lanes and the work that Danielle did in, was it 2012-ish for the study for the on-road route, maybe 2014. It had been many iterations before that. Yeah. And so I guess as far as whether it's successful, so since the money was identified to connect the trail between Albany and Buffalo, it met the success warrants for what that initiative was trying to do. Now you can continuously stay on the trail route for this whole corridor. We get to decide locally whether it met some of our goals. So because of the prior planning we had done, it met what the study advisory committee had hoped. And it's also, we'll know in a couple of years whether we're meeting our safety targets and goals. If for those that aren't familiar, for safety studies, we at the end of the year, might even be 6 months after the end of a year, we get accident information from DMV and police records and things that tell us where there's been crash patterns and things. So I think we probably don't know yet whether we've gotten our safety improvements that we were hoping for when we design this, but that could be a way to measure success, not just by ridership numbers. As far as usage statistics, I don't believe any usage projections were made. We don't have a great way to forecast the usage for something like this still in the state, and it's something that there's a lot of interest in. Let's see, but NYSDA, we're trying to standardize the way that we're going to go forward collecting bike ped count information. That we created an engineering standards that we'll use when we do contracts to have people go out and do counts. So that's something that I think they finished up a draft of that engineering instructions last year. And we can do spot requests with our current contracts with our consultants to get count data. So we'll probably, since this has come up not just today, but also with the federal certification review and other things lately, people want to know how many people are using this. So I think this is something that we're going to be doing some data collection on, hopefully this year. If not this year, it'll be the following year. My folks in our Albany office say that they're going to standardize, actually start collecting regular intervals so we can have over time growth metrics for counts for bike ped usage. But that's something that they probably won't roll out as a general thing until, let's see, 2023 probably, with the next round of count contracts. So maybe that's a lot of details about that. I was glad I got to look at this beforehand. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. You can go ahead.
Okay. Well, as far as other places where we might do similar treatments, this has come up in a couple of studies and things in the community. People are like, oh, that's pretty neat. We are interested in that. We don't have any immediate plans to do something like that, but I think as we see how that operates and how it gets used and how maybe it addresses different user connections or concerns, we'll have a good idea of whether that's something we would want to emulate. And as far as connections into that corridor, there's been probably a lot of press about the 81 project, but one piece of that is with Almond Street becoming a boulevard, there's going to be more pedestrian and bicycle connections going north-south along an Almond Street, and then it would connect to Erie Boulevard in the north end. So there's one big north-south connection that we're going to do. Neil might be able to speak to some other ones that they might be considering at the city level. We also, I want to point out that right now it already does connect into the Loop the Lake Trail and the Creek Walk Trail. So that's the ones that I know of. So
Well,
that's
speaking
all
of
my
Loop-
notes.
Speaking of Loop the Lake, the Onondaga Lake Parkway, obviously, if that were a true parkway, you could do the similar thing along the parkway and maybe reduce some of the bridge strikes at the same time. Just a suggestion.
Sure. I think we're still evaluating what's exactly going on there, but that's not my project, so I can't speak. to that.
I know,
Sorry.
I know. That's another one that's been decades long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Neil, did you have anything that you wanted to add on
Yeah,
that one?
that was a great, a good question and a great response from Julie. And another good point from Paul. So, yeah, in terms of north-south connections, the city just added about just shy of 2 miles of on-road bike lanes, bike facilities along Salina Street that connect directly to the Empire State Trail, where it almost transitions to the Creek Walk. So that's brand new, starting this year. It's out there, and if you're not familiar, they're there. They are on-road bike lanes. It's not a shared use path. It's not physically separated, but in addition to that, we have an ongoing TAP project to add bike lanes to Lodi Street. And we're going to stretch those dollars from where Lodi intersects Erie Boulevard and the Empire State Trail north into the north side. Our plan is to get it to Butternut Street. We have limited funds for both design and construction, but even if we don't reach our target of Butternut Street, we'll keep going. When we do have dollars, we'll find more dollars and keep expanding that, because we feel there's a significant benefit in connecting the north side neighborhoods over to the existing facilities like the Empire State Trail and the connective corridor, because that leads into a major healthcare and job center as well. And it's not just the north side, right? We want to do this with every neighborhood. It's just that we have a project for Lodi Street pending now. In addition to that, other side of town, south side through the valley, the phase 3 of the Creek Walk is going to, it's in its early stages right now. The scope's being worked on, but the intent is to move that forward as well. And it's not like it happens tomorrow. Those are really big undertakings for the Creek Walk, because you're dealing with DEC and a lot of other fun things that happen when you're close to water. But the good news is that would extend it to the city line, and it's moving forward. It's in the very inklings of the planning stage now. So those are, and as we already discussed, the Creek Walk connects right into the Empire State Trail. The Empire State Trail uses the Creek Walk from downtown to get you to the lake. So we're adding connections. We want to add more. We need more. We deserve more. But it's been a little slow going, but we're working at it. Absolutely.
Anika, you had your hand up.
Oh, no, I just wanted to correct something I said when I said the canal earlier. And Neil just said it, the Creek Walk is what I was meaning to state. I did say canal, but I meant to say Creek Walk. So thank you. Just want to clarify that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we did have a couple questions come in. Question about public outreach. So Megan's just going to address that real quick, and then we'll get to questions in the room here.
Yeah. So in a few recent meetings, the our federal certification public meeting being one of them. We've had some suggestions for increasing our public outreach. And one of them specifically that I just wanted to let people know that we are following up on. We heard several people say that they felt we should work more directly with the Tomorrow's Neighborhoods Today or TNT groups in the city, and just try to get out into more of the neighborhoods and let people know what the SMTC is and what we do. So I just wanted to let folks know, because I think many of the people on this call today are also involved in the TNT groups, that we did reach out to Tina, who's the manager for TNT, and asked if we could get maybe 10-15 minutes on the agenda of all of the TNT sectors over the next few months, just to do a brief presentation about who we are, what we do, encourage people to sign up for our mailing list so that we have more connections with people, so when the invitations go out for these forums on active transportation, that hopefully we're reaching more people. A lot of community groups, and TNT being one of them, are hesitant to just forward our emails, and I get that. I manage a listserv too. We don't want to just send every single thing out from other groups, but we do want to encourage more people to sign up for our listserv so that the people that are interested get direct notice from us. So watch for those over the next few months. The only ones that we were able to get onto the agenda in February are going to be Valley, Eastwood, and West Side. Some of them, I know South Side didn't have any space on their agenda until April. And I think maybe North Side as well. So there were a few that it's going to take us a few months to make the rounds of all of them. But we are going to try to do that. And as always, if you're here today because you received an email that somebody forwarded to you, definitely sign up. I'll put our web address for to sign up for our mailing list so you get notices directly. But keep forwarding those as well, and encourage people that to sign up for our mailing list. Like us on Facebook or follow our Facebook page, so that we can just broaden our reach out into the community. We also this is our 4th of these forums. So you probably noticed that when you registered, it did ask you to put in your zip code. So we are going to take a look now that we have, a lot of data from the last 4 meetings. We just wanted to take a look at the zip codes and see maybe where we're getting representation, where we're not getting representation from, so that we can, really decide how to move forward with that and have some good data to go on. So I just wanted to let people know that those things are in the works.
All right, thank you. Let's see, Peter had his hand up before Megan started speaking. So let's go to Peter and then we'll go to Anika. So Peter, I think we just have to have you on mute.
Hey,
Okay.
was just actually another comment on the Erie Boulevard. I think around where Price Chopper is. I frequent there to go to the gym, and I see a lot of, I do see more people using it, but also I see people on either side of the boulevard, maybe coming from those neighborhoods, I don't know, on bicycle and on pedestrian. So I think the entire, you could conceive of it as 3 lanes are being used by people and bicyclists from time to time. But that's just sporadic whenever I'm there. So
Yeah, that's great. That's great to hear that people are using. Thank you. Okay, Anika, I'm gonna send you a request to unmute. Oh,
Yep,
you got
I
it?
was one
Okay,
of the
good.
people. I was one of the people that did put that in the email too, and I've spoken on as far as the outreach. It's not just online though, because not everyone has access. So just doing emails is not. I know you're doing meetings, but how about even within those community centers, like there's Southwest Community Center? I don't know. I know Boys and Girls Club is mostly youth, but parents and guardian caregivers frequent there. You have Brady Faith Center. I mean, there's several areas that a flyer can be put up or whatever, because as I look at this screen, it's not representation of all that's in the city, especially when we're talking about the urban areas where you see Black, Brown, Latino, Native American, et cetera. I'm not seeing that representation. So that's why I question what has been the outreach to get more folks in there, especially when you're seeing a variety of cultures that are utilizing, whether it's for walking, running, jogging, skipping, cycling, or whatever on these lanes and on the roads. So that is really my concern. That's my concern in any organization that I'm a part of or I jump on a meeting for. So I just wanted to make sure that we're not just saying, oh, let's just do it by email. Let's look at other things. Not everybody's on Facebook. Not everybody's on TikTok. You know, some people don't even use social media or Syracuse.com. I know that was mentioned when I had emailed before. Not everyone pays attention because they don't properly filter out comments. So a lot of people don't even want to frequent Syracuse.com. So, you know, these are the concerns of how to do things better. You know, there is some outreach, but how to do it better.
Yeah, and that's what we're looking to do. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for the suggestions too. We appreciate that. Let's see. I feel like I saw. Did I see another hand up?
No, there was one question I just wanted to address too that came in.
Go ahead.
Somebody, and I forget who it was, but somebody asked something about whether we were looking at COVID impacts on traffic in the region. And I just want to note that we had an article about that, a brief article about that in our January e-newsletter that we sent out. So I will put that in the chat as well. Bottom line is we still are kind of waiting for a lot of things to settle. We don't have any big conclusions to draw yet, but we do have access to some data and we have started to look at that. So if you are interested, you can take a look at our January newsletter, and there's some links in there to some other data sources as well.
Okay, I do have another question. Actually, I believe Gloria, I believe you submitted it. It was a question about on whether or not it just says striping unimproved arterial streets in the outer Comstock neighborhood. Is that what you had wanted to ask? Oh, got to ask her to unmute.
I've brought this up a couple of times, by email. And in the outer Comstock area, we have a lot of unimproved streets, no sidewalks. And these are arterial streets. There's significant traffic, including tractor trailer trucks, which are illegal, but truck drivers are required not to be able to read. It is really dangerous. Now, if there was striping along the sides of the street, it would enable people to walk more safely. Also, bikers would be able to bike more safely, or joggers, because one will be able to have this path where it's relatively safe. And this is just paint. It's not a big improvement. The other thing is we do have signs, a couple of signs, no trucks, not enough. So I would really think that we should not have to deal with tractor trailer trucks going through a neighborhood. Nobody gets their meat delivered by Cisco. So this is something that is really essential. When you have no sidewalks. I might add that if you look at Meadowbrook, a couple of years ago, they put striping on the sides of the street, which really improved the safety. And it also enabled the cars to see where the road was, which on a dark, rainy night is almost impossible without striping.
All right, thank you for that. We'll make sure that the city hears that comment. Is there anybody else? Megan, have I missed anything here? I'm looking to see.
Nobody has their hand raised. Anika did send a message and said she had another question, so
okay.
I can ask her to unmute.
Okay, yep.
It's not really a question. It's more, since I know we're talking about transportation, it's just a plug, really, basically for for a Crash Victim Rights and Safety Act. It has to do with cycling and other things. Like there are several bills that will be kicking off on Thursday. Like you have slower speed limits for everywhere. Sammy's Law, which gives New York, it's for all of New York State, but what starts in New York kind of trickles up. Gives New York City the power to set lower speed limits. Complete Streets Bill, increase in state funding where the municipality agrees to fund the complete street design feature. Complete Street Maintenance Bill includes complete street design features and resurfacing, maintenance, and pavement recycling. Also Safe Passage, which requires drivers to pass cyclists at a safe distance of a minimum of 3 feet. DMV pre-licensing for safety interacting vulnerable road users, and Crash Victim Rights, which guarantees support and a voice for crash victims and their loved ones in the aftermath of traffic violence. So I wanted to put that out, because I am on that coalition. So I just wanted to put that out there and ask for support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. That's great.
Is there, Anika, if there's a link or anything you can share, when we compile the answers to questions and the meeting evaluation, we can put that in.
Yep, absolutely. Anything else? No, we like to try to keep these till kind of on time here, so we'll finish. Oh, we've got a question from Jay. So Jay, I'm going to ask you to unmute, and then you should be able to speak.
Let's see, I'm trying to start my video. Hold on 1 second. Hi,
There you
so
are. Hi.
this is Jay Lambrix. I'm coming to you from Ithaca. I'm a transportation analyst with the ITCTC, for the local NPO. And just one quick technical question. I tried to share a link for an upcoming webinar on complete street network designs, and I wasn't able to share with everyone. I just want to make sure
I'll share it out. Yep.
Great. Thanks. Because just kind of going back a little bit to the whole question of like, how do you evaluate the effectiveness of bicycle infrastructure? And this is something I've been wrestling with recently is, can we really make an honest judgment as to the effectiveness of a bicycle lane if it does not connect to other parts of the bicycle network? Or if it doesn't have feeder routes into said bicycle infrastructure. I'm just wondering, going forward when we're doing these counts, I think that we need to also take into account the context of each individual piece of bicycle infrastructure. And I'm just wondering if that's being discussed. I know this upcoming webinar kind of delves into that. It's being sponsored by the Maryland Department of Transportation, but I'm just wondering if NISDOT has been talking about that. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the first I'm seeing of your webinar specifically, but are you talking whether we're looking at how metrics and things more? So is what your question, Jay? Oh, sorry, he can't. He's muted too.
Sorry, technical issues. So I'm just wondering if when it comes to like standardizing counting for things like bicycle lanes, sidewalk, multi-use trails, I'm wondering if in the conversation surrounding that standardization, we're also including context as a variable.
Okay, so I guess this is a more complicated question that might bear deeper explanation later, but off the cuff, this is what I'm thinking. So I have a background in doing our traffic count for vehicles, and in our Albany group where they're planning how they're going to handle these kinds of counts, it's the same people who do the vehicle counts that are going to be organizing how we collect and store and track over time the data for pedestrians. So from their background, maybe not as much as you would like, but I guess with the existing vehicle count program, there's no great way to track changes to the system, right? So like if I'm looking at a historical traffic count thing for 20 years and we count every 3 years and I've got numbers showing growth, there's never any place where we record, oh, there's a Walmart that went in here, or we added a traffic signal here, or anything like that. So it kind of requires local knowledge to apply any useful information out of that, right? Because like if in 50 years they look at the traffic counts for COVID, they're gonna, if they don't know that it was a COVID time, they may not apply those contexts to it. So I think it's going to require a lot of work on transportation planners like you and me too, to interpret that data and like keep track of those things over time. I don't think that the counts that we're going to be taking are going to have any kind of notes on that. We would probably try and standardize like good weather, like summertime. We wouldn't take a count in January and expect that to be the high count for the year that represents the best use of it. But I think you're going to see, because it's complicated, it'll be captured better in like planning documents, not in data.
Yeah, and the reason why I bring it up is just because like with normal traffic counts, it's a very, very different it's a very different kind of system that you're looking at. Oftentimes when you're looking at bicycle networks, you're looking at this kind of, you're looking at individual isolated projects oftentimes, whereas with road counts or traffic counts in the larger road network, you're looking at an interconnected road network. So I just think that doing those counts on bicycle lanes is a very different, there's a very different dynamic at work. And so just
I would tend to agree with you, Jay, that you got source generator pieces that a certain segment may see higher volumes because of those sources and generators, along with closing the gaps between trail segments. As soon as you close a gap, now all of a sudden you get an increase in volume. I'm sure that if they're coming up with new standards for calculating or counting bike and pedestrian traffic, that they would consider that in that overall standpoint, because bike lanes and pedestrian volumes are definitely different than vehicular traffic. They're definitely different.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. I guess looking at what we did, so there was a pedestrian safety action plan that we did in 2018, I believe, where we were looking at our state roads specifically and doing a bunch of updates to like traffic signals, timing, to add pedestrian counters or there weren't any, or adjust the timing. So we did like 200 ped counts at intersections to see where the demand was, where they were crossing, and like the kinds of things for context that we required was like it had to be when school was in session. It had to be okay weather, it couldn't be winter time, things like that. So that's like a starting ground for like the kinds of things you look at to make sure you get useful data that would like serve the needs. Is that kind of maybe helping?
Yeah, it does. It's just, it's very, I feel like, you know, if there isn't a network in place, it makes it very hard to tell whether the result in bicycle traffic is from the network itself or from the lack of network. Like it's very hard to like, you know, take the variables like weather, for example, and really apply it in a situation where you don't have that connectivity, because it gets kind of muddled as to what is having more of an effect than the other.
Okay.
Like, is it the weather or is it the lack of connectivity? But
I mean,
anyway,
like we were talking about with the snow removal stuff earlier, there's the people who really need to rely on it are going to be there anyway. You know, so you're still going to measure some of that stuff when you're out there collecting data.
Yeah.
So one thing I might just add, you know, and I think maybe one of the issues here is when you do any traffic count, right, we're using that, and the idea being that we're measuring demand, right? But like if you're doing a pedestrian count, maybe one of the questions is you're measuring the number of pedestrians that are there, but are you really measuring the number of pedestrians that want to be there, right? So there's a difference between measuring what's there and measuring the demand. And when we do vehicle counts, we assume those are the same things because we assume that the infrastructure exists, the road is there, everybody that wants to use it is using it. And this was one of the things we struggled with in helping to identify pedestrian priority zones in our region, was that we can't just rely on existing counts. You know, we do count pedestrians. I want to be clear on that. When we go out and do a turning movement count at an intersection, we're counting vehicles. We count pedestrians and bicycles as well. But, you know, we don't have every intersection in our whole region. And even if we did, it's not a good measure of what the demand might be. So we spent a lot of time and effort developing a pedestrian demand model that is on our website. And when I'm done talking, I can find the link for that and then throw it in the chat. But, you know, that really looked at land use throughout the region. Where are those pedestrian generators and where do people want to be? So, you know, not necessarily where they are now, because maybe they're not there right now because there is no good facility to walk or bike on, but based on the density of uses and the types of uses, where would people want to be? So I think that's kind of relevant to this conversation about how we measure pedestrian use versus pedestrian demand, or bike use versus bike demand. You know, is it, and how we define success in those arenas where our numbers are so low right now, but we need to build out a network that works to get people out there using it.
Yeah, and I think you made a great point, because it's not really demand that we're looking at. We're looking at pent up demand. Mm-hmm. It's kind of the same. We see something like that, similar to that, with regards to electric vehicles. It's a similar kind of dynamic where there's more demand than there was expected, just because, you know, there wasn't the charging infrastructure, there weren't that many affordable models being offered. And because of that current lack of demand, people thought, oh, there's no demand for electric vehicles. But when you see in markets that have greater charging infrastructure, more models available, all of a sudden that demand grows exponentially. So, and we're kind of in a similar situation with cycling. There is a lot of pent up demand.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't want to take any more of your time. I know.
That's okay. You know how to get in contact with us. We can have some discussions about transportation planning theory anytime you want.
I think I don't see any other questions. And Megan, if you're okay with it, we're kind of at the end here. I don't like to keep people later than our time. We want to make sure you come back. So if there's questions that we didn't get to, or you have a specific question, you can drop it in the chat, or you can send us an email. I think we have an evaluation form.
Yep,
Megan.
I put the evaluation form link into the chat.
Oh, yep,
I can do that again.
I see. Okay.
And if there are any questions we didn't cover, we'll try to address those. And we always do a summary of the meeting evaluation, and we will post that on our website for everyone.
I do want to thank our guest speakers, Paul Lagnetto from the town of Camillus and Neil Burke from the city of Syracuse, for sharing your sidewalk snow clearing processes with us. Anika, I've got one final question here. Well, Anika will be our last question or comment.
Oh, no, I was just wondering, will the links, I was just typing it in the chat, will the links be provided in the follow-up email that were added in the chat? Because you can't save the chat, so I was just curious if those will be added to a follow-up email.
We can do that. Yeah. Okay. We'll make sure we do that. I'll put a note in here, and you're welcome. I'm expecting our next meeting, I think April 2022, and we've actually got Paul's going to be Paul Calabufo is going to hopefully speak with us about the scooter and bike share system at that time. So that's kind of our plan for our next meeting. But we will solidify that with him. And just want to thank everybody for your time today and your patience with our technology. And thank you to Julie and to Neil and to Paul for speaking today and offering your comments and sharing your knowledge with us. It's greatly appreciated. And hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.